And we are live. It is 6.
I could start without Brian, I suppose. He'll be your second. I better turn my phone on. Okay, call this meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Hawley,
Here.
Mr. Bailey,
Here.
Mr. Frederickson,
Here.
and Mr. Chapman.
Here.
All present.
Welcome and introductions. Board of Determination members and alternate. We'll just go down the line. Bob, we'll start with you. Just name and where you live.
Robert Hawley, Glenever Township.
Rich Bailey, Sutton Spade Township.
Gary Frederickson, Leelanau Township.
Rob Chapman, Bingham Township.
I'm Steve Christensen, Leelanau County Drain Commissioner.
I'm Brian Sensi with GDI Consultants, the engineer for this drain district.
Okay, this is the opening of the Board of Determination meeting. We'll start with the oath of office. Please stand and raise your right hand. As members of the Board of Determination for the Lake Bluffs Drain, do you solemnly swear that you own land in Leelanau County?
I do.
As members of the Board of Determination for the Lake Bluffs Drain, do you solemnly swear that you do not own land in either Solon Township or any property within the proposed Lake Bluffs drainage district?
I do.
As members of the Board of Determination for the Lake Bluffs Drain, do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully fulfill the duties being asked of you in determining whether the petition as called for, the locating, establishing, and constructing of the Lake Bluffs Drain is or is not necessary for public health, convenience, or welfare based on the provisions of Public Act 40 of 1956 as amended, which is commonly known as the Michigan Drain Code?
I do.
As members of the Board of Determination for the Lake Bluffs Drain, do you solemnly swear and understand that your determination as to the necessity of the petition is not to be based upon any potential costs for locating, establishing, or constructing the proposed Lake Bluffs Drain? You are not to determine the scope of the project, and also that your decision as to the necessity of the petition is to be based upon evidence and testimony presented at this meeting, and that all discussions and deliberations are to be done in public.
I do.
Lastly, as members of the Board of Determination for the Lake Bluffs Drain, do you solemnly swear and understand that your determination as to the necessity of the petition for public health, convenience, or public welfare is not to be based upon whether there is a majority of evidence presented that shows such necessity for the drain, but rather that there is some relevant, competent, and material evidence presented on the record that shows such necessity, i.e., a landowner or multiple landowners with testimony of flooding or property damage, or a landowner or multiple landowners with pictures of flooding, such that if the petition is found necessary, it can remedy the issue.
I do.
And that is the oath. Now we are to the election of chairperson and secretary. I would entertain a motion
It's their meeting.
It's their meeting?
Yeah. I make a motion that Rich Bailey serve as chairperson of the Lake Bluffs Drain Board of Determination.
I'll support that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I move that Bob Hawley be appointed secretary of said board of determination. Gary, you want to give us a second?
Second.
Other discussion, there being none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion that public comment should be limited to 3 minutes per person. At the discretion of the chairperson, it may be extended.
Support.
Other questions, comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Consensus approval of the agenda. Any comments, questions, changes? There being none, consensus approval.
Support.
And do we need to take more of this, Brian, or are you taking over?
Nope, it would be, yep.
I'll do the role and duties. Oops.
Should be here.
We should probably send
Oh.
it.
Yeah, right here.
Okay. This one here.
Yeah. Pardon? Yeah, we're holding this one. I'm sure they can sign the
Lake Bluffs Drain Board of Determination, role and duties of the board. On September 10th, 2020, a petition was signed by residents of Lake Bluffs subdivision for the location, establishment, and construction of the Lake Bluffs Drain, in which Solon Township and the Leelanau County Road Commission, both at-large entities, may be liable for an assessment. The drain code requires that upon the receipt of the petition for constructing and establishing a new county drain, the drain commissioner is required to appoint a board of determination composed of 3 disinterested property owners who are residents of the county but do not live in or have any property interest in the proposed drainage district boundary or the townships included in the drainage district, in this case, Solon Township. The drain commissioner is not part of the board of determination and has no role, influence, or decisions to make at the board of determination meeting. The drain commissioner will swear in the board, and once that is done, the meeting is essentially run by the board members, and it's their meeting. The board of determination elects the chairperson and the secretary. The secretary records the minutes of the meeting with a recording secretary provided. The board of determination will hear testimony related to the necessity of the location, establishment, and construction of a new county drain to be known as Lake Bluffs Drain. After public testimony, the board will then decide whether the location, establishment, and construction of the new drain is necessary and conducive to the public health, convenience, or welfare for any lands within the drainage district boundary. The drain commissioner and the engineer will stay for the meeting but have no role in the decision as to whether the project is necessary. They do not support or oppose the project. That is solely within the discretion of the board. However, the engineer will try to answer any questions the public or the board may have. At the meeting, the only decisions that will be rendered are whether the location, establishment, and construction of the drain is necessary and conducive to the public health, convenience, or welfare of or any properties or municipalities within the drainage district, and whether the lands comprising the drainage district boundary accurately define the boundaries of the lands benefited by the drain. For the first item regarding the necessity of the drain petition, the word "any" is underlined because it is important to understand that the drain code is set up to protect the rights of the affected encumbered landowners within a drainage district and is not a democratic vote based on who in the audience wants to proceed with the project or not. The drain code recognizes that by and large, a far greater number of people in a drainage district typically have no drainage problems, and usually a few number of properties typically are burdened with the runoff from those unaffected landowners who are much higher in elevation within the drainage district. This is why the drain code is considered a minority protection law, meaning that the rights of only a few number of landowners within a drainage district, which could be just one landowner, i.e. typically the downstream flooded properties, are equally or more important than those in the drainage district that have no drainage problems, i.e. typically landowners who are higher upstream in the drainage district. Their runoff from their lands drain onto the flooded downstream property owners. The engineer, Brian Sensi of GEI Consultants, Inc. will be there to present findings from a conditions assessment and analysis of the proposed new drainage system location. These were items required in the drain code to be done as part of the new drain district application and new drain petition process. Although part of the work that he was required to do was come up with some recommendations relative to the drainage issues, those issues or those recommendations are not being presented to the board, as the board does not vote on the cost, size, or scope of the work and whether to do any of those recommendations. The engineer is also there to answer any questions procedurally for a board of determination meeting, provide a summary of various aspects of the Michigan Drain Code, and of course, answer any technical or engineering related questions regarding the petition.
I'm just gonna go through a couple things in regards to this meeting, just so people that are in the audience or are listening at home know about these particular boards of determination. Steve explained a little bit about the role and duties of the board, and basically they kind of have a limited window on what they can vote on and determine as far as the petition being necessary or not necessary. So now that I've told you Steve's told you what the meeting is about, again, we'll go through and want to explain a couple of things what the meeting is not about. The board's only decision that they'll have here tonight is to determine whether the project or the petition is necessary or not necessary based on the evidence that's provided at this meeting. So that includes everyone's public comment and any testimony or information that they provide to the boards and any written comment that has been sent on prior to the meeting as well. The board should determine that a project is necessary if it hears testimony that establishing the new drain is necessary for protection of public health, convenience, or public welfare. Common scenario in which a board would determine a project necessary is if it hears evidence from a landowner or individual that is within the proposed drainage district, and they provide testimony that they have been flooded or have had standing water in their basement, for example. And if it's something that the petition, which therefore can remedy, which that's some of the basic stuff that we had to do up front as part of the drain code, then that would be a common scenario which they would typically determine that the project is necessary. There is due process set up in the drain code that I'll discuss at a later time. There is the ability to appeal their decision whether they vote it necessary or not necessary. In regards to project cost, as Steve explained, this isn't something that they get into. They don't determine what the scope or the project cost is, and that's kind of a very simple reason. Two, there hasn't been a lot of work or items of work that have been done up to this point. We've kind of done the minimal items to lay out the district and the proposed route and bring us to this board of determination. The reason for that is if we develop some big plan on how to fix this upfront and spend a bunch of money and they determine that it's not necessary, that would have been money completely wasted up to this point because there would be no project or anything. There can't be another petition for at least a year if they determine it not necessary. So just so everyone knows in regards to cost, because that's always something that comes up on this, at the end, if they determine it necessary, the petition then gets handed over to the drain commissioner, and the drain commissioner determines the scope, basically, of the project, and along working with myself, determines what the fix should be, and we're looking for the most cost-effective solution to resolve the issues outlined in the petition. So the cost, once we have a solution and construction plans, that has to be bid out, and the lowest responsible contractor who bids on the work we select, and then that is the cost essentially of the project. So drain petitions are different in that costs are something that are dealt with at the end, which is kind of difficult to for people to understand, because a lot of times I get the scenario of everyone asks, how can you buy a car and not know how much it's costing? Where the check and balance is on that, the way that Michigan has provided in the law, which is the Michigan Drain Code, is every drain commissioner is elected in every county, and therefore that's why they put the decision on what the size and scope of the project is on the drain commissioner. So the check and balance is, for Steve, it's next Tuesday, is every drain commissioner has to be elected every 4 years. And so that's kind of the basic check and balance. I don't work with any drain commissioner I've never worked with one that didn't want to, that wanted to spend more than they needed to. So everyone tries to resolve the issue in the most cost-effective manner. And kind of some of the tasks that the board is charged with for this meeting and what they have to look at is kind of the reason that the cost is put out to the end. But you will have, there will be a day of review of apportionments at the very end in which costs are determined. You'll be able to look at your assessment, your neighbors, what the township might have been assessed for the road commission, and the drain commissioner has to be there that particular day, and you can change the assessment roll on that day if you have a good point. Say, hey, I don't, that back acre of my property drains elsewhere, it doesn't go there, or it's not going to benefit from this. It may make a good point, and you can change the roll at any time on that day or up to 10 days after. So there's kind of the cost is done at the end. If there is a project that they determine is necessary, what typically happens is these drain projects are financed over a number of years, such that the amount that you're paying in any given year, the assessments would show up on your winter taxes every year, for example. Once we have that notice for day review of apportionments, and at that particular time, we look when we're doing the assessments and you come in for the apportionments, we're also looking at the finance period in which to finance the workout. So just as an example, let's say there was $500,000 in work and you wanted to finance it hypothetically out $100,000 a year that you would pay and assess out, and everything's kind of split up amongst the properties based on that. So we typically get very low interest rates. Right now it's incredibly low. We got like 1.4% on a bond a couple weeks ago, which is crazy. So we typically get they're tax-free municipal bonds, so they're very attractive to people to purchase, so they don't have to pay taxes on any of the income that they get from it, because this is a public municipal project when it gets financed. So just so everyone understands the cost of this thing, this isn't like a one-time thing where someone says that you owe $1,000 or $5,000, whatever. It's the drain commissioner kind of works with myself and kind of looking at, based on the properties that are in there and the homeowners, what is something that it is feasible for everyone to pay per year, and it's not going to put someone out on the street corner or something. So, and sometimes that may be 10 years. I've done them as long as 30 years out, just so everyone knows. So again, I'll go through just at the very end the appeal process. If you are agreed with the board's decision, in regards to it, but other than that, I'll turn it back over to you, Richard.
So I guess the next order of business is opening the floor to public comment.
No, I think it's the presentation, it's my presentation.
Your
Sorry.
presentation, okay.
I'm on Zoom, Laurel, so do I just,
It's shared.
share? All right, there we go. Okay, I'm just gonna go through real quick, the work that was done and the purpose for this essentially the work that we had to do. The first thing that is done, when establishing a new county drain, it's a two-part process. The first thing you do is establish the potential area of the drainage district. That's known as an application. So an application was filed in regards to determining the drainage district. So that's chapter 3 of the drain code. And then the next thing it asks for is once the drainage district is determined, Steve files an order laying out the drainage district. And then the chapter 4 petition is done to establish, locate, and construct the drain, because right now there is no county drain in place. And so the drain location is essentially what the chapter 4 part is, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Drain code then says to hire a licensed professional engineer to determine that boundary and the most feasible, prudent route for the drain. I then do a site assessment in looking at the drainage district boundary based on the site contours that the county has, LiDAR data to 1 foot elevation. And then we look at if there's any things on site like culverts and whatnot that would alter that drainage district boundary. Identify any potential drainage issues, and again, the most feasible and prudent route for the drain that would service the drainage district boundary. So whatever route, and you'll see it on here, it's not something that's necessarily the drain commissioner has to be, that's the route for the drain, or that's the work that's going to take place. Yeah, typically we'll look at just the main section, or main trunk line of the drain, and show that on the chapter 4 part. So I want to jump to the drainage district boundary. So you'll see on here on this attached map, you can see my cursor here too. So this red line right here is the drainage district boundary. Kind of a good way to look at that is that is like a watershed boundary. So the idea being, if it rains, over here where my cursor's at, outside the red line, that's not going to make its way into this particular drain or potential drain once it's in place. So the drain code basically says that this drainage district boundary is all the lands that may benefit, not do benefit or will benefit. It may benefit from the proposed work. So one thing to point out is this drainage district boundary tends to be larger when we come to this meeting. The purpose for that is we want to give everyone the potential notice to be able to come and provide their public comment or testimony in regards to this petition and whether it's necessary or not necessary, or their opinion about it. What we don't want to have happen is we get done and So for example, there's maybe an area here on the northeast part of this boundary up near Fouch Road that it may not drain to this particular drain, and we may not end up doing any work down here, and thus there's really not any benefit or any kind of benefit to those properties from whatever the new drain is to resolve the issues. So if that's the case, when we get to that point where we know the cost and we have the data review, in those cases, we would typically just zero out those properties so that they would have no assessment, or we would actually remove them from the district and they wouldn't even be notified if they're not going to be assessed of that assessment day review. So some people may have discrepancies or differences in regards to this boundary, but for purposes of this meeting, we tend to be more inclusive, just so we don't want to get to a point where we're ever adding anyone into the district at the end. Because this is kind of the, your constitutional, notice requirement to be able to give notice and provide testimony in regards to this. So if there are issues like that, we can always go through them, and this will get adjusted. So when we have the assessments, that's the actual boundary we're going to use for the assessment. So in regards to the route, you'll see that we have down here, it's this blue line right here is the area we put down as drain route, and it's just basically both sides of the road. We didn't include Lake Court, but it certainly could include it as part of it, and it doesn't mean that, I would think that if they determine it necessary, the board does, we would need to do similar work along Lake Court as well. Both of these roads in through here are private, so that the board understands. And the reason we have it kind of on both sides of the road is because really, and once you get into the pictures, you'll see the solution for this subdivision pretty much depends on the fact that these roads need to be paved and need to have likely either like a valley gutter or some type of curbing gutter to keep the road water from running off onto the road to the adjacent properties. You'll see from some of the pictures, and I'm sure you'll hear from the residents in the area, that the road in a lot of areas tends to be the highest part of in compared to someone's property, or there aren't areas to collect runoff off of the road in the properties right adjacent to the road. The road is kind of crowned, and it either washes down the road because there is no collection system, or where there are ditches, they tend to be all filled in or have already filled in completely since it was established. So the route is about 3,200 feet with both sides of Lake Bluffs. The purple that you see down here where my cursor's at, we would look to, at least for now, we would like to end the drainage route here. The ability to do that is kind of based on the idea that whatever water is collected and sent downstream, in order for us not to establish this purple as a county drain, meaning it's under public jurisdiction, we would need to show that whatever water we're collecting, an increase in the flow to downstream has been mitigated in some manner. So potentially, as part of the work, there would need to be areas that collected or held the water such that they didn't immediately just collect everything and send it downstream. So there would have to be likely some water detained throughout different areas of the subdivision and we would likely have to get easements for that, just based on the way that the roads are set up and elevated compared to the properties. So we wouldn't necessarily look to have this entire stretch established as a county drain, partly too because it's an existing water course. There aren't any houses right along to it or anything like that. It takes in a ditch along the south side of Fouch, and then there's a culvert under here that takes it down to Lake Leelanau. A lot of this is regulated wetland areas adjacent to it, especially with the high water. So that's kind of the task at hand, is initially we'd like to stop the route here such that we don't need to get easements along this area. And the idea would be we don't have to make improvements to the system because it's not taking in any greater amount of flow than what existed today. And the general criteria in Michigan is that as long as you can develop a property, and as long as you don't increase the flow or change the flow of your property to the downstream properties, then under kind of like Michigan common drainage law, then that's essentially the litmus test that you need to pass, is that you can't make it more water on someone else downstream. So we tend to do the same exact thing and follow the same criteria when we establish these drains. We don't want to just collect a bunch of water and push it downstream and push it onto someone else and make it their problem. But in order to do that, we have to make sure, and I have to be able to certify that, yes, if it was 5 CFS that was going there prior, even after our work, we're not going to have any more than 5 CFS going there after our work is done. But that means that we have to retain it or detain it within portions of the district and through here. The existing infrastructure, so the biggest thing is there is gravel roads on Lake Bluffs Drive, and the most prevalent issue is the steep grade of it, probably between 8 and 10% average throughout, which is difficult for a paved road, let alone the gravel road. And without having an adequate way to collect the road water, it's merely exacerbating the issues in the subdivision. There's a lot of topography and a lot of rolling land. Some of the houses are well below the road, some of them are well up above the road. But in general, the road runoff, 100% of it sheds off or just goes down the road and ruts up the road. Just a couple of pictures. So this is at the entrance of, I'm on Fouch Road looking south up Lake Bluffs Drive. So you can kind of see the grade or the steep grade up the road. This is roughly where we look to end the drain, so to speak. So this is on the west side, just the southwest side of Fouch and Lake Bluffs Drive. And this is that ditch that goes to the west down Fouch in through here. If you look at these two pictures over on the right here, you can see, here's a good example. So you have a walkout basement with this particular house. The driveway and such is probably at a good elevation above the road, but what you have then is you have, and this is typical in a lot of the subdivision, areas that used to maybe be ditched have filled in. So you kind of get these areas where the water takes the path of least resistance along the road, and what hasn't been built up or sediment that's collected over the years. Many times it'll just, in this case, this water comes down and runs down this way over along the backside of the basement. But you can see the rutting in the road and such. And when I took these pictures a couple of weeks ago, Fred was out adding gravel to the road and grading it out again, just because it was so rutted up from some of the recent rain events. There are some ditches in place in through here where they have them. Most of them there are check dams, but most of them are basically the sediments filled up to the top of the check dams. So again, any runoff that we would normally have, here's the edge of the road with this picture that comes down. A big part of the issue is keeping the sediment and washing the sediment out. If you looked in the picture that we just showed, the last one up here, you can see that they can't get grass in a lot of these areas because the road and that silt in the road is constantly washing out. That's again another need for the paving as part of it. I don't see a solution to the drainage issue without paving the road. It would be just throwing good money at a bad solution to try to leave the gravel roads in place. So with that, I don't like to take away too much stuff from the landowners and their public comment. I know they have pictures and such, so I'll turn it back over to you guys. And if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you. So proceeding to the public comment portion of the meeting, I think we'll take the people that are present first, Laura, before we take anybody that's via Zoom or phone. Do you have a number of people that are, or is it what we see on the screen there?
I show 8 watching.
8 watching? Thank you. So we do have written comments. I don't know who you are. If you have comments that are here, you can still add to that. We do have the pictures. We've seen the pictures Brian has shown us. But if you'd like to address the board, you're welcome. State your name for Laurel and your address. And with that, I would open the floor.
We're good with our written comments, I think.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I would read in who at least wrote in or provided comments, just so you have
okay,
it.
we will attach them to the minutes as well. So we do have written comments from Dawn. Help me out with the Dawn.
Ganya.
Gagno.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a letter from Dawn Gagno. We have from Fred and Michelle Sepala.
Sapella.
If it's real bad, make sure you correct me.
No big deal.
Bob Sandvik.
Sandbath.
Sandvik.
They're tricky names.
Yeah.
William Moore. We have a letter from James Campbell, Will. And also a note from Sharon Baiswell.
Thank you.
Baiswell, thank you. As I say, if you wanted to add to that in any way, shape, or form, just catch my eye and by all means. Okay, with that,
Is that Mr. Moore there, he felt that he had zero benefit of this, so maybe if you know who that is.
He lives down where the drain goes.
Okay.
He's not,
It's not part of our,
he's not,
yeah, I didn't even know that. Yeah, we don't
he
even
owns the
know.
property behind your house.
well, there is, as Brian pointed out, if he's listening or if you know him, there is an opportunity down later in this process, after we get beyond tonight, where people who have no, not adding to the problem or don't benefit from the solution, you have an opportunity to appeal their inclusion. With that, Laurel, I think I'll let you recognize people that may want to speak.
Mr. Mosier? Mr. Mosier? Nope. Going on.
Is there no one else that's indicating desire to speak?
He's the only one on right now.
I'm just here to listen for this one.
What I can do is I can announce the number. for
He's got
the-
his hand up over there.
Yeah,
So,
You
yeah,
gotta unmute his mic then.
he is.
I did unmute my mic.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm just here to listen for the 6 o'clock meeting.
Check your mic, sir.
I did. Says I'm unmuted.
It doesn't say he's muted. Now he's muted.
Can you hear me? Indicate with your thumb, please.
Yes.
We cannot hear you.
He might have to
Um,
turn his mic on.
Is it the mic that's built into your computer?
He's on mute.
Well, but if his computer is muted,
unmute.
You might have to turn up his volume.
I've tried that now. Is that better?
still can't hear you, sir. Check your volume.
Volume's up.
You can always give him that phone number at home.
If you'd like to call in on the phone, the number is 256-8109.
I know he got the notice for the other district, he wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Microphone on his computer.
Well, Zoom portion maybe.
Hello?
Hello, this is Chuck Major.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just here to listen in for the 6 o'clock meeting, so I have no comments.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that, sir.
I have no comments.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
He's more interested in the other district.
If anyone is watching on YouTube and would like to comment publicly, the number to call in is 231-256-8109.
Well, we're waiting to see if anyone does
That is
call. I think
right.
for Bob and Gary, any particular questions? We do have the pictures here. I think it's pretty self-evident what we're looking at.
I have no questions. It's pretty clear to me.
Gary,
Yeah, I physically looked at it, it's pretty bad, yes,
you actually drove down.
yes.
County boardroom.
Hi, this is Jim Cantwell. I would like to comment on your board meeting you're having right now.
Yes, you could state your name again and where you live, please.
Okay. My name is Jim Cantwell. I live on East Lake Bluffs Drive, 6747.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that this board that is at the hearing right now is aware that we are intently wanting to pave this road as soon as possible.
Tell him to mute his TV. He needs to mute his TV.
You need to mute the TV. We got a crossover.
Is that better?
Excellent.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Jim Cantwell from 6747 East Lake Bluffs Drive. Appreciate you gentlemen and ladies taking the time to review this for us. We are intently interested in paving this road as soon as possible. I know you had made a mention during your presentation that the drainage project would not be of any value if it were not us wanting to pave the drive. And I just wanted to make sure that you know that the majority of us in our subdivision are ready to go with that as soon as we're able to.
Thank you for those comments. We do not have anything to do with the actual timing of the job, but we understand your interests in seeing this move along. Thank you.
Thank you.
How long do you want to wait?
We'll give it a few more minutes to see if anyone wants to call in. 3 minutes. So if there's anyone listening that would like to call in, please do so soon, because we're going to close the public comment period.
And make sure you're using your mics.
County boardroom board of determination meeting.
Hi, this is Jim Cantwell again. I'm really sorry, but I forgot to mention too that during the last rainfall, Lake Court Drive had some really terrible erosion from the rain. So in the proposal that was presented, it did not look like there was any drainage set up for that area yet on the proposal. And I think it's going to have to be done because they're getting a lot of erosion up on the court. My house is at the very bottom of the road, And we're getting like the final result of everything down there, but there is a lot of erosion happening on Lake Court Drive as well.
That wall when they were proving it. This wasn't their actual
So they were all working, so.
house.
Is that it?
Mr. Cantwell, is that it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Give it a couple of minutes.
Anybody else?
Maybe announce the phone number one more time.
Laura, would you repeat the phone number?
The number to call in for public comment tonight during the Board of Determination session is 256-8109.
County Boardroom Board of Determination meeting.
Yes, this is Jeff and Don. You know, like some comments also about this Lake Court Bluffs.
Could you state your name and where you live, please, and then go ahead.
Yes, it's John Yu, 6751 East Drive. So we know on the left as she's going up and the position that water and erosion, a lot of the gravel is coming over the hill into our yard and down our driveway. We've been battling that since we bought the house here in April. And all this is now washing down into Jim Campbell's house. He's just south of us, and he's the first two lots. We're lot 3 and 4, he's lot 1 and 2. And that's probably what gets the hill above our house. If you see in the pictures that we sent in, I sent in a group of pictures, the erosion is almost 2 feet deep in some of the roads that we keep trying to fill. So just want to make those comments. Thank you.
You're welcome, and we do have your pictures in front of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is this upper road here, Steve, does that have a name?
Lake Court.
Pardon?
Lake Court.
Lake Court?
And you stated that that may be added.
Yeah, that would need to, like, for the route of the drain, or likely for the work that would be done.
When I was up there the other day, that looked like that was feeding most of the water onto the other road, so.
Yeah.
I live on Lake Court, and it is the highest elevation. I live at the top of the hill there. And, you know, everyone's talking about the gravel in their yard, but my concern is the safety factor. You know, somebody's gonna, their wheel's gonna get into one of those crevices and tip over or have an accident. And that's what I'm afraid of every time I go down that hill.
Are you Miss Baswell?
I'm Miss Basil's neighbor, Marcia Gillespie.
Must be.
I did work at the Bailey store about 5 years ago. I ate lunch with you a couple times upstairs. 5 years a lot lighter from driving that road.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
I don't know if Fred wants to answer to this, but this last rain this last weekend, it's the worst I have ever seen this road. In fact, at one point, it was barely one width of the car that could get down because of the deep erosion. And Fred and a few other neighbors, we ended up getting, what, $1,250 some odd dollars worth of gravel just to fill it in. It's totally an unsafe situation. There are no traffic or street lights or anything, so it's very dark. If you're not familiar with the road at all, it would definitely be really a safety hazard for anyone who was just coming up the road if they didn't know it. They would be in serious trouble with their car themselves.
It's so steep that if you don't have asphalt on there to have the water running inside the road itself,
Correct.
There's no place to put it, period.
I think we've Band-Aided to the point where we can't Band-Aid anymore.
Well, I think we probably have heard from anybody that wanted to comment. Anything else from those of you that are present? Thank you for coming. Motion by the chair to close the public comment period.
So moved.
I'll second that. Other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion that the proposed locating, establishing, and constructing of the Lake Bluffs drain as petitioned on September 10, 2020 is necessary and conducted to the public health, convenience, or welfare.
Motion by Hawley,
Support.
support by Frederickson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3 ayes, no nays. Do you record that, or do you want me to mark that down, Laura? Okay, so the motion passes. Brian, you were going to discuss the appeals process?
Yep. So, anyone aggrieved by the decision of the Board of Determination as to whether the locating, establishing, constructing is necessary and conducive to public health, convenience, or welfare may appeal the decision within 10 days. The appeal must be filed with Leelanau County Circuit Court. A municipality may appeal their determination as regards to the necessity within 20 days of probate, and that goes to probate court. The court's review, so the either circuit court for landowners or probate court for municipalities, their review is limited to whether the board's actions are authorized by law and whether the board's findings of fact are supported by material, substantial, and competent evidence on the whole record, meaning whether or not they were presented with evidence, testimony, or information in which they made their decision upon, not whether the court does not look at determining whether the petition should be necessary or not. They're going to solely look at whether the board was given evidence in which they made their decision or not. The order of necessity will be available at the drain office following tomorrow morning. Anyone that does want to appeal, we recommend consulting an attorney regarding this if they choose to do so. That's all.
Anything else, Brian?
I think that's it.
So we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Mary, I think I also know Dawn Wanning. Say hi for me. It's been a number of years since I've seen her.
Okay.
I believe she's one of your neighbors.
Dawn?
Dawn Wanning also goes by
Oh,
Daniel.
oh, yeah, I know her, blonde, pretty blonde. She's a pretty blonde. She worked over in Maple, she lived in Maple